Have you ever stopped to wonder what makes something alive? We talk about things being able to grow, move, and reproduce. But if you zoom in, way past what your eye can see, you find the common denominator for all life, the cell. Whether it's a giant blue whale, a towering redwood, or the tiniest bit of bacteria, everything is built from these microscopic building blocks. Understanding life begins right here, with the basic unit of structure and function. The story of the cell really kicks off in the 1600s with a scientist named Robert Hooke. He wasn't looking for life, he was just examining a piece of cork, which is part of a tree, under one of the earliest clunky microscopes. What he saw were these empty, honeycomb-like compartments. They reminded him of the tiny rooms, or cells, where monks lived. The name stuck, even though what he saw were technically the dead cell walls of plants. It was a monumental first step in recognizing this fundamental structure. Right around the corner from Hooke, in the Netherlands, a different kind of scientist was grinding his own lenses to make incredibly powerful microscopes. This was Antonie van Leeuwenhoek. Instead of dead cork, he looked at things like pond water and even plaque from his own teeth. He was astonished to see tiny, swimming creatures, actual living cells, which he excitedly called animalcules. Leeuwenhoek's work showed that cells weren't just empty structures. They were the busy, functional little worlds where life happened. Fast forward a couple of centuries to the 1830s. Two men began putting the puzzle pieces together in a more formal way. The first was Matthias Schleiden, a botanist who spent his time looking at every plant sample he could find. From the grass in a field to the petals of a flower, his conclusion was solid. Every single part of a plant is made of cells. This established that cells were the universal building block for the entire plant kingdom. Almost simultaneously, Theodor Schwann, a zoologist, was doing similar work, but focused on animals. He looked at feathers, blood, muscle, and bone. What did he find? Just like plants, all animals, from the smallest insect to the largest mammal, are also composed entirely of cells. Schleiden and Schwann realized they had discovered a fundamental truth. The cell is the basic unit of life, whether you're talking about a plant or an animal. These two ideas formed the first two pillars of the now famous cell theory. There was one major unanswered question left. Where do new cells come from? For a while, people believed in spontaneous generation, that life could just magically appear. Then, in 1855, Rudolf Virchow offered the simple but profound answer. Omnis cellula e cellula. All cells come from pre-existing cells. Think of it like a family tree. Every generation comes from the one before it. A cell must divide to create a new cell. This concept of biogenesis was the final, crucial tenet that completed the cell theory. So, when we summarize the cell theory, it boils down to three powerful statements that govern all of biology. First, everything alive is made of cells. It's the fundamental ingredient. Second, the cell is the most basic part of life. If you break it down further, it can't sustain life on its own. And third, no cell ever pops into existence from thin air. It must be a product of another cell dividing. These three ideas are the bedrock of our understanding of biology. When we talk about life, it's important to distinguish between two categories based on cells. Some life is unicellular, meaning it's just one cell performing all the jobs, like a one-person band. Think of bacteria or simple pond organisms. Other life is multicellular, like you and me. We're massive colonies of specialized cells working together. Cell theory applies equally to both, whether it's one cell or a trillion. The cell is the basic unit. The simplest forms of life are housed in prokaryotic cells. Imagine a basic studio apartment. Everything is in one open space. Prokaryotes, like bacteria, have their genetic material, DNA, floating freely in the cytoplasm, and do not have a nucleus or other complex internal compartments. They are small, ancient, and highly successful, proving that sometimes simple is best. Now let's move up to a mansion. That's the eukaryotic cell. These are the cells that make up animals, plants, fungi, and protists. The key difference is the presence of a true nucleus to house the DNA and a bunch of specialized membrane-bound structures called organelles. This complex organization allows them to be much larger and perform a wider array of functions, which is necessary for complex life forms like us. Every cell needs a boundary to separate it from the outside world. This job belongs to the cell membrane, a flexible, thin barrier. Think of it like a smart security guard. It has to let the good things in, like nutrients and water, and push the bad things out, like waste. This ability to choose what passes through is why it's called selectively permeable, a vital function for maintaining life. Inside that cell membrane, the bulk of the cell is filled with the cytoplasm. You can picture it as a clear, thick, jelly-like filling. It's mostly water, but it's not empty. It acts as the internal highway for moving materials and is the watery environment where many of the cell's crucial chemical reactions actually take place. All the organelles are suspended and buffered within this important substance. For eukaryotic cells, the nucleus is the star of the show. It's the cell's control center and contains all the instructions, the DNA, to build and operate the entire cell. Think of it as the cell's head office with the main supercomputer. It dictates when the cell should grow, what proteins it should make, and even when it should divide. It's the ultimate brain of the operation. Inside the eukaryotic cell, you find many tiny specialized structures called organelles. The word organelle literally means little organ, and just like your heart or lungs, each one has a specific job. They work together as a highly coordinated team to ensure the cell can perform all the complex functions necessary for life. It's this division of labor that makes eukaryotic cells so incredibly efficient. If the cell needs energy, it sends a request to the mitochondria. These are the cell's power plants or powerhouses. They take the food we eat, like sugar, and convert it into a usable form of energy called ATP through a process called cellular respiration. Without them, the cell would have no power to move, grow, or do anything else, which is why cells that need a lot of energy, like muscle cells, are packed with mitochondria. Every cell needs to build stuff, and the most important things they build are proteins. The tiny structures responsible for this are the ribosomes, often described as the cell's protein factories. They take instructions from the nucleus and translate them into a chain of amino acids, which folds up to become a working protein. Ribosomes are so fundamental that you find them in both simple prokaryotic and complex eukaryotic cells. The cell theory's second tenet is that the cell is the functional unit of life. What does that mean? It means even a single isolated cell is capable of performing all the necessary tasks to be considered alive. Imagine an amoeba. It can find food, consume it, get rid of waste, and reproduce, all within its single boundary. Everything that defines life happens at the cellular level. In larger, multicellular organisms, cells don't just float around randomly. They organize themselves in a hierarchy to increase efficiency. Specialized cells group together to form tissues, like muscle or nerve tissue. Different tissues then combine to make an organ, like your heart or stomach. And finally, organs work together in organ systems, like the digestive or circulatory system, to make a complete, functioning organism. The idea that all cells come from pre-existing cells is only possible thanks to cell division, primarily through a process called mitosis. Why is this so important? For a multicellular organism, mitosis is how you grow from a baby to an adult, and how you repair a cut or a broken bone. For a simple organism like a bacterium, it's how it reproduces. It's the engine that drives life and makes the cell theory complete. The core cell theory has stood strong for over 150 years, a testament to its accuracy. While the theory itself is simple, modern science, using tools like electron microscopes and genetic mapping, has revealed an incredible amount of complexity within each cell. Scientists continue to study cell communication, diseases, and function, but the underlying truth remains. The cell is, and will likely always be, the central focus of biological study.